Chair, I can confirm you're live on YouTube.
Thank you, Lauren. Got a bit of feedback there. Is that better? No, I think it is. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Members Major Project Board. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. I have Councillor Ware. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you. Item 2 is minutes of the previous meeting, which is our pages 4 to 9 on the agenda. Are we agreed that they're a true and correct record of the previous meeting held on 27th of March 2024? Agreed. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item 4 is urgent business, understanding order 7. I have none. Members present, understanding order 34. Councillor Ring and Councillor Dickinson is joining on Zoom, I believe. Is she on Zoom? Not yet, but may join. Item 2. Welcome, Councillor Barish. Just let you, standing agenda item 6, standing item is action log, which is you, Vanessa. Sorry? Yes, of course. Sorry, let's do the roll call, if we may.
Thank you. Councillor Beales?
Present.
Councillor Blunt?
Present.
Councillor Moriarty?
Present.
Councillor Morley?
Present.
Councillor Parish?
Present.
Councillor Ring under standing order 34. And the apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. So over to you, Vanessa, please, for the action log, which is page 11 for those of you. Agenda.
Thank you, Chair. So this action log, as members will recall, is run just to try and make sure we pick up any items that perhaps sit outside of the meeting, and just to help members sort of monitor progress of those. So the first, we've only got 3 items on there. The first item is about an overview of the process and a definition of how the projects move through the different stages. I've just put on there that we'll bring it to a future meeting. Part of that is because we're looking at bringing in a system which might actually change how we deal with such things. And it seemed a bit silly to bring something through when we are hopefully on the cusp of bringing a system in which we'll bring to the board for assurance purposes and sort of explain how we're going to deal with things. So, you know, with your agreement, that's sort of on hold or working, you know, behind the scenes. Item 12 on the log, I've just left it on there so that you can see that one's been completed. That was information about how projects can be removed from the list of projects. At the last meeting, MMPB decided they didn't wish to see the 3G sports pitch project any longer. And officers scratched our heads momentarily because that's the first one of those that we've come across. But we've discussed it with the Deputy Monitoring Officer and the Section 151 Officer, Michelle, who's in the meeting today. And we've decided that that's fine. We won't bring that to MMPB for monitoring or assurance purposes. But we just wanted to note that it will still be monitored under the capital programme monitoring. So that will now disappear from the log. And then item 13 is actually something that's been overlooked because it was down under David's name, who's now left the authority. So I will pick that up in the next few days or so and just chat that through with James and Heather. That's just around the Parkway Florence Fields item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vanessa. Are there any comments on the action log? Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I should know this, but under capital programming monitoring, does that include monitoring by the officer programme board?
No, it doesn't. It's the finance team that do that monitoring.
Yes, of course.
Well, the ones that we drop off, I think we dropped off the 3G pitch, didn't we?
Yes.
Now, who's going to monitor that from a work, progress perspective on where's the pitch going and how's it going, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes,
Madam
please.
Chair,
Vanessa.
thank you. I mean, that would just be the operational line management of the people concerned that are delivering, and they report into the council in some way through their operational structure.
So that comes through the portfolio holder.
Essentially, yes, that it would, that's certainly where I expect it to be. The portfolio holder will update us and council as appropriate. Matthew, did you have a comment? Put your hand up at one point.
No, Chair, I don't actually.
Okay, just a couple of questions, if I may, Vanessa. You said the process is changing, and so you'll bring it to a future meeting. Is that a long-awaited software update that populates uniformly across the board, or is that just it is?
Yeah, it's
Could you just explain that for the board's
absolutely,
benefit?
absolutely, and I'll just actually bring James in, who's in the room as well, because James and I are working on this together. But just to say, nothing would change. I just didn't want to write a paper and bring a paper if we can, in 2 months' time, bring something that's a bit more comprehensive. But just to say a few words on that, as Councillor Beales has said, it's a long-awaited, long-wanted piece of software to help the council monitor on a much more, what's the word I'm searching for, reactive way, proactive way, instant, thank you. Consistent way, there you go, people are throwing words at me. Consistent and proactive way. It should give us, we're hoping, and we are at the early stages, we're going to the ICT development group in June next month, but we're hopefully pushing an open door. James and I have met with some suppliers, and we've sort of brought the corporate team in as much as we can to make sure that things are lined up across the authority. I don't want to overpromise. We're not just there yet, but we are definitely much further forward than we ever have been.
Thank you, Vanessa. That's helpful. Yeah, useful. That's coming to software development in due course. Turning to item 12, which is the 3G pitch, which we decided to drop. I guess the question there is, you've noted that members no longer wish to view that project. So is it entirely at the discretion of the board to do that? If there was a major project that's coming forward and the board said, we just don't want to look at that, whereas the sorry, I'm not saying it to be troublesome, but I think we do need some clarity around that there are some things we would be obliged to look at, I assume. That the 3G pitch, I think it was felt, is not a major project. I supported that view. Can we just have a little bit of clarity around that, please?
Yeah, so Vanessa did say that we kind of scratched our heads a bit about this, because obviously this board is a subcommittee of Cabinet, and in theory it is up to Cabinet to decide what goes on the member major projects list for oversight and overview and monitoring. Now, obviously, this situation has evolved over time, and in theory, we're changing the Cabinet header sheet, for example, to say, is this a major project that Cabinet considers should be monitored by a member major projects board? So some of that stuff hasn't actually happened in the past. It was just that when we did it initially and clarified the status of MMPB, there was a list of projects, and they went down as being decided that they were on the list of projects that Cabinet wanted to be monitored. So when at the last meeting, I think it was, the board said we don't want to look at the 3G pitch, it was a bit sort of, well, can this board make that decision? Although it is a subcommittee of Cabinet. So we think we didn't want to go over officious, shall we say, and go, well, then you've got to take a report back to Cabinet to get it taken off. And we took the very pragmatic view that, there's Cabinet members on this board, and if there's a decision of this board that they think, well, actually that could be, is more of an operational project and not necessarily a big strategic project that the board needs specific detailed oversight on, we kind of felt it was fair enough for this board to make that decision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it would be useful for you to just clarify with the monitoring officer that, because it does seem very cumbersome if it was felt that it goes back to Cabinet. perhaps you can clarify if that authority could be delegated from cabinet to here, because there, as you say, there are a number of cabinet members on here. That's always going to be the case. So it would seem sensible to just tidy that up. Councillor Moriarty.
Yeah, I endorse what you just said. I think it's important if we can find a way that this board makes a decision, because not all members are in the cabinet, and we would want their input on that decision, I think, as well. We wouldn't want to have cabinet saying, you're not going to be looking at this, when there's people of this board who might in fact wish to.
I think that's a very fair point. If we can just tidy that up, Matthew, for the and report to the next board as yes, this can be done, we'd put it in place. That delegated authority makes it all very clear for all involved.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. And just the only comment on the briefing on Parkway, Forest Fields rather. Yeah, we need to get that done if we can, unless there's any commercial considerations that prevent that. But presumably we can update all members on progress there. I do at council anyway, but I think it'd be useful to have a more comprehensive update, perhaps from you, James.
Yes, I can give one now or in the future.
No, I'm talking for all members.
Okay.
Yeah,
No problem.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Vanessa, those that contributed. We move on to agenda item 7, which is a project overview report. Oliver. Sorry, those are pages 12 and 13 on your agenda.
Great, thank you, Chair. And just say, I think we'll look at the project overview and then move straight in, if it's okay, Chair, to the sort of detailed individual items at the same time. They sort of move through. If I just explain,
you'll merge item 7 and 8, as it were.
Yeah,
okay.
Bring those one. So just to give a view really around the overview, what this is put together is a bit almost the conversation before about a system is giving that dashboard of where we are with different projects. What are the key lines that we've got, what's changed over time, but also show whether RAG status has changed up or down, or whether they've stayed the same, just so that everyone can see what's moved in the preceding times moving forward, and giving those key highlights of what it is that's changed in that time. So hopefully you'll see from there we've got 2 projects that are on red, 8 that are on amber, and 4 that are on green. The 2 on red, one is the Nora Enterprise Zone, road infrastructure and utilities, and there are some key points there. That's state level as a red status, so that was red status last time as well. So there are key points moving forward there. The other one is the Guildhall, and again that has remained level at a red status. I think we've explained at the previous meeting, obviously different fines there, etc., moving forward, and that's been moving forward a fair amount with that. The 2 that have changed in RAG status, one has gone up, which I think has moved from a amber to a green. Thank you. So we've got one which is West Winch. So that's moved significantly forward since last time. That's the risk status there has gone down. And then we've also got Salters Road, which has moved slightly up in this status to an amber from a green, I believe, last time. So so those are the key indicators of where projects have moved over time. You'll see at the end there's the overall status commentary, which really takes the key notes from the detailed reports that we've got going forward as well there. So what I'll do now is if I just move straight into the highlight reports. I don't know if members want to sort of focus on particular items, but if I move through them sort of one by one, if people are happy with that, and then we'll take those key items.
I think obviously the red, if we do it by risk rating, and if there is anything exempt, we have got an exempt session as part of this meeting, so please flag up anything exempt and we'll push that into that session.
Perfect, thank you, Chair. So we'll go first to the red status for Nora, which is the infrastructure side. The main part of this status is around risks around delay to the programme and projected overspend, reported and discussed with county. I don't know, Matthew, if you want to give a brief highlight of that, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, and I might have to come on to some stuff in exempt session. So the roads and the infrastructure are almost there. If anybody's driven past, you can actually see some blacktop on the roads, etc. So that's quite exciting. One of the key issues that has arisen is the power supply with UK Power Networks, where we thought that we'd acquired some substation capacity quite some time ago, but it hadn't actually been delivered. So we've been pulling out all the stops with UKPN, our consultants, and NHS Property Services, who are currently building the new medical facility on the Naru's regeneration area enterprise zone. And obviously they're working to quite a tight timescale to open up, because it's a Wave 4B funded project, which apparently sets some quite tight timescales. So it's getting there. You've probably seen the buildings come out of the ground. You know, we've got our speculative units, which is another report after this. But the medical facility is coming out of the ground quite well. And my guess is they're wanting to open it in July. So we're getting really close. But I'll come on to some other bits and pieces about some of the other red issues later, if you don't mind, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. Are there any questions that people want to pick up on that now?
Any questions on Nora? No?
No.
No, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. So we'll move on to the Guildhall, which again is an overall red status. This is as previous. A lot has moved on and changed there really as we've gone through looking at heritage, etc., and the heritage discoveries there. Huge amount of work going on by the team to move this forward, and what they're doing at the moment, and where we are at is basically looking at the REBA stage 2 cost plan, but looking at options moving forward and looking at the funding options as well coming forward. So work is well advanced on that. That will be moving forward in the coming weeks, and there'll be discussions around how we can move that project forward, what the options are, how we manage the risk, and I think that's the key part to it. Is really that balance of risk over cost and over opportunity, and to really understand that going forward. There was an open day there last Thursday, if memory serves me right, which we had a fair few people attend, but there was a lot of good feedback there, a lot of positive feedback, some good questions as well, the team have said coming forward. So again, those proposals have been put out there, have been shared, and again are being taken forward. So the key risks here are really around those financials and that timescale going forward, and then the plan coming forward out of that will look to manage that, we'll look to reset some of that, and then we can look at this project going forward and manage that against those sort of resets on the project. Are there any questions around the report on Guildhall at all?
Just one, if I may, that REBA stage 3 is programmed for end of May. We're on track for that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Morley and Councillor Plum.
Thanks, Chair, but I'm sorry, my question was exactly as yours was.
Right.
And it's not long to the end of May, so must be a little bit of doubt about that, notwithstanding the answer. Thank you.
No doubt about that. We've been reassured. So
What I'll do is I'll check with the team. That's that is my understanding that we're still on target for that, but I will also take your question back to make sure that
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Councillor Blunt. Did you have a question? No? No. Okay. Oliver, please.
Okay, so those are the two red states. So we'll move on to Amber, and we'll move forward in line now. So the next one is, as Matthew referred to, is the Nora spec units, and those are moving forward. I think Matthew, you covered the key points on that one. I don't know if there's anything else around that.
Yeah, just very quickly. So we're in the final sort of negotiations with the tenant taking on roughly 50% of the office units, and we've got some interest in the other units as well. We negotiated a kind of a tenant fit out situation, and that's coming to fruition, completion fairly soon. So just doing the final bits and pieces on lease agreements, etc. There was a bit of an issue to do with attenuation tank, which we're pretty much getting there to resolve that issue. And we think it's not us or the infrastructure contractor. So it'll be the contractor who designed and built the unit that we will be looking for them to remedy it.
Well, that's good to hear. That's been a point of concern for some time. If I could ask, when do we think we'll have the first tenant in occupation? Is that likely, please?
It depends a little bit on the completion of the roads. So as I say, the phasing of the road has been timed to, we rejigged it to try and satisfy the NHS, the medical surgery, medical facility, but also the ingoing tenants on the phase 1 speculative units. So in theory, in the end of May, start of June, they should be able to access it. There's all sorts of things around commissioning stuff and all that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you. Lots happening around the end of May.
Indeed.
Forward to that. Oliver, please.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot happening at the moment moving forward. So we just. Okay. I think that was looking to admit somebody that, yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Dickinson. Just wait till she's connected it for me. Councillor Dickinson, welcome. I think you're just connected on Zoom. If you could just let us know you can hear us.
Sorry, Chair, I think it's an officer joined actually from James's.
Oh, is it? Okay. I can't see from here.
It says K Holden. It says K Holden.
Okay, we carry on.
All right. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Morley, you had a question.
Yes, it's for my own information, if I may. What sort of businesses are looking to move in, Matthew?
So the one that's taking on the majority of the office blocks, not the majority, about 50%, is actually a current tenant of ours located at the Kingsland Innovation Centre. And it is quite a sort of a young, new business that's in that sort of R&D type operations. There is another company that is linked to healthcare that is interested in some of the other offices. And then we have some manufacturing businesses interested in the light industrial units, which that's what they're designed for. So yeah, I can probably go into more detail. I can't remember all the names of them, but I can follow it up with and send something around to the board members if you like. Yeah, certainly.
Carry on.
I think it's of interest to know who, and is it net when somebody moves out of the click and goes there? Is that a net increase in our business, or obviously downstream as well, thinking of business rates, etc., etc.
So just very quickly, so the Click building is 100% let, and we have some demand. So I have no particular concern about somebody coming out of Click and taking on their own premises. It's kind of what part of it was designed for. Yeah. To sort of incubate and develop, and then you move on. And the company that we're talking to with the offices, they've got ambitions to actually then move on and build their own premises elsewhere on the business park as well. So it's kind of like a nice flow through. So there'll be a net increase in our kind of general income, etc. What I was going to say, Chair, as well is as the buildings get and the roads get there, I don't know whether the board would like to have a walk about the site once the roads are open. And have a look at some of the units that have been built, just to sort of get a sense of what's been delivered. So
I'm getting the sense that the board would like to do that. I think that would make a great deal of sense, but perhaps we open it wider than that. Councillors in general having a look at what we're doing, because it's both visible but inaccessible. You can see it from many points of the town. So I think that would be a very good idea if the board are in agreement. Assume so. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Parish?
Yes, it's a general question. I remember several years ago when these units were proposed and the planning came forward for them. solar panels on the roofs were an option, I believe, to tenants. And I was quite disappointed by that because I thought, you got roofs, stick solar panels on. Have tenants taken up that option or are moving forward on that?
So yes, Councillor Parish is right. The buildings were designed to accommodate solar panels. And obviously there was a debate whether we actually put them on. But one of the things is a cost to us and the benefit was to the tenants. So it's kind of like, well, actually we'll build the units to accommodate them, then the tenants can then move on and do their solar panels themselves. So
Are they doing that?
I can't quite recall whether they've actually gone on it, but I can come back to you on it.
The issue is, and I'm sure one of our portfolio holders would say that the borough as a whole is supposed to be moving to a lower carbon footprint. And part of that lower carbon footprint would be that buildings that we own provide solar panel or solar electricity or whatever, rather than going onto the grid. But there we are. Because you did raise the question of you're still struggling to get a grid connection.
Indeed, yes, but that should be in place in the not too distant future. I'll check on whether they've opted to put the solar panels on. And I'll check on electrical vehicle charging points as well.
Okay, it's a very good point. That could we use that as a test case, as it were, because there's many aspects to putting solar panels on the roof, as we know. Is firstly, what's the use profile of the business? Does it work for them? Power use, and I'd use the example of a potato store being fabulous use, because when it's hot, you need to refrigerate the store, and when it's hot, you're generating a lot of power. That works well. Not all businesses have the same their demand curve and their usage curve, their generation curve in the same place. It'd be useful to look at that. There's also the issue of throttling, depending on what UKPN say, that a recent connection I was involved in was throttled to 30%. So if you're producing 100 kilowatts, you're only getting paid for 30. And if you're not then consuming it on site, that's a pretty inefficient installation. So I think if we could put some parameters around this so that we could understand just how difficult our objectives are and what we could possibly change to fulfill those objectives. As Councillor Parry says, we need to start making progress in this area for environmental reasons.
So yeah, it's a very valid point, because the estate was developed or designed quite a while ago. And obviously there's been this sort of move to shift away from gas and more to electricity. And this is one of the issues that has cropped up fairly recently in terms of, no, we don't want to use gas for central heating and other things. What we want is air source heat pumps. And then you automatically got a bigger draw on the electricity grid. And then, yes, we also want to put EV charging points for electric cars. That's another draw on the grid as well. So yeah, it's something that is changed dramatically, shall we say, over the last couple of years, particularly. So yeah, that's something we're looking at.
Yeah. So if we could have that report to this board, I think to this board is probably the most appropriate. If we could do that, please. Okay. Thank you. Oliver.
Yeah, great, thank you. And if I can just mention as well, just around the interest in Nora, we've got a small number of people just going up to a conference, which is a national conference called UK Reef next week, I think it is, which covers, it's part of a Norfolk delegation, if in effect. So a number of people are going up from different councils to promote some of our different areas, and Nora being absolutely one of those, but also to learn and talk to other authorities, but there's also investors, there's central government. It's a massive conference there. I don't think we've done that before, but it's looking to how do we start to promote this more widely, but also branch out to understand more of the interest that would be there in West Norfolk. So we're going there. It's a trial run in effect this time round, I'd say, and then potentially looking to do that moving forward. So it's just to make you aware. Thank you. Okay, so moving forward, I think the next one in the pack is Florence Fields, previously known as Parkway. That's on an amber. There have been issues around ground worker ceasing trading, as you can see in the notes, taken forward with the potential that that would impact timescales, etc. moving forward. I think we've taken some positive steps, as it says in the report there, and I think we're moving towards a point where that risk is reducing now from that point. So we are moving forward well on that project. We've actually got James here, which is useful as well. He runs the project. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, we now have appointed a new groundwork subcontractor to take on the rest of the scheme, so that risk is diminished significantly. It's not put the project in a worse financial position. The contract has been negotiated, which is very positive. I could go into more details, but possibly best in exempt session on the point of financials.
Please do.
The first units are likely to be slightly delayed as a result of the kind of pause that we had to take on site, but we're anticipating at the moment, we're kind of doing a big review of the programme in light of this, but we're hoping that the final units won't be pushed back significantly. We're hoping that there's enough float within the programme to absorb this period. So I think the next highlight report will be in a better position.
So when will the show home be? Is that going to be delayed, or when can we expect that?
I'd have to confirm the exact date that we're now proposing that once this programme review. I'd have thought that the show home will have a small delay, but the roof is now on the show home, so that has continued to progress quite nicely.
So that's sort of September, October.
I'd have thought so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Are you able to report, Councillor Moriarty, I'll come to you in a moment. Are you able to report on the drainage issues and the like, or is that better under exempt?
No, I think so. I mean, the weather in the last few weeks has significantly helped the amount of water that has been held on site. There's been some further positive conversations with the Internal Drainage Board to find a temporary solution to help discharge water off site to allow us to continue with some of the larger areas of groundwork. And we don't think that there's going to be any barriers to that. It's just demonstrating how we're going to manage that to the IDB. We do understand that conversations between the IDB and Network Rail are continuing for the permanent solution, but we've not had the full details of that yet. We understand that the design is complete and nearing agreement between those two parties.
Okay, that's good to know that the temporary consent or likely to be in place, enabling that drainage of the site. But if you could, next time, hopefully we'll have an update of works to that culvert, which seem to be taking time. But thank you for that. That's very good news. Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if this is for now or for the exempt section, but I'm just wondering if we could have an update on how it's been going with Homes England and the accelerated funding position.
They're aware of the delays, and because they're outside of our control, it's kind of allowed for within the contract. It's not our fault as such that the programme that we originally kind of committed to is now not being adhered to. So that I think they're relatively comfortable as long as we keep them up to date with information and communicate that positively and frequently. But we have processes in place between corporate projects and our strategic housing team to provide those updates quite frequently.
Happy. Thanks, James. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Is the groundworks contractor that's been appointed is the contractor for all groundworks? I did read somewhere there was going to be 2 phases or maybe even 2 contractors.
We'd looked at splitting the groundworks package into multiple contractors if deemed necessary, but the subcontractor we've selected, we believe, has capacity and experience to do both. So yes, on Parkway, a single groundworks contractor has been appointed, but we've got, and I mean, this kind of feeds into Salters Road in that we had a single groundworks contractor over 2 projects there. A different groundworks subcontractor has been selected to finish that job, different to Parkway, to kind of spread that risk and workload within the local supply chain.
Just clarification prompted by Councillor Morley's question, really, that I had updated colleagues that there was a smaller contract let to get on with the show home area and what have you. And I think what we'd like is confirmation that we've now let the contract for the whole site.
Yes, the whole contract is let, and it is the same subcontractor that was appointed to do the temporary phase as well.
Okay. Oliver, please.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to Salters Road, which James just mentioned. The report outlines there's 30% of the site's been handed over, 23 plots so far. They've held a Creating Communities event there as well, which received a lot of positive feedback and some positive feedback from tenants. If people aren't aware of that, certainly when we've got next one, we'll make sure people can come along. We tend to send it out anyway, don't we? When they're being held, but effectively just brings together what's happening around that community, different contacts, different things that people moving into those homes are likely to want to know. So I think that's been really positive from there. The ground worker sort of aspect was a potential issue there, as James just said. That's been pretty much resolved from there. I don't know if you want to pick up.
Yeah, it's been resolved. I think the only thing to add specific to that point is, again, we're communicating that delay with Homes England on the ACP point, and we've communicated that with Freebridge so that they understand the delay as the eventual owners of those properties. They seem comfortable with those delays at present, having themselves been impacted by that subcontractor in other projects. So they were aware of the issue more generally. Regardless, we think that there will be a delay in that project, but it will be, all the properties will still be delivered this calendar year. It's a couple of months at the end, but we can't make up some of that time because the programme is much shorter to completion at this point.
So it's that uncertainty that reflects the amber. You're not quite sure whether you can.
I think at the time of writing that report, it was amber because we hadn't had a new subcontractor. Again, I think by the time of the next report, that project will probably go back to green.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Sorry, Councillor Moriarty.
Perhaps I should know, but I don't. So can you remind me or tell me, Freebridge asked for a change to the scope on this one?
They've made a decision as a business that they put flooring in as standard on new properties now, which wasn't the case in the past. So they've asked us, instead of us handing the property over to them, they then seek a contractor to put the flooring in, which means they have to do a re-clean, and some doors may need adapting and mastic needs redoing. They just decided to add that to our package so that they get a complete house, everything done, single clean, more cost effective for them, easier for us to manage that handover period as well. So that's why the scope changed.
Thank you. Yeah. Oliver, please.
Yeah, thank you. So the next one is Southend Road. We've actually got a presentation on that later. So I don't know if we want to pick up questions on that one at that point, whether we want to go through the report now.
I think it'd be useful just to update those aspects that we can update and cover the sensitive areas in the exec session.
Yeah, okay.
Just a broad overview would be useful. James, do you want to? Are you best placed to do that?
Sorry, I'm not looking at text, so I've got the highlight reports on my phone, which I thought was the easiest
Right.
way of doing it. Just moving down there. So the timeline, I think, is the major red point on the highlight report. We'll go again into the delays in more detail in the longer presentation later, but they're kind of multifaceted and quite complex. They may a number relate to weather and some technical details that were fairly complex on the project. There's some red risks relating to the sales process that we'll talk about in the presentation later. And probably the finances. I think they're still at amber. They're in a well, we'll see the situation later in the report, but I think the point that they're in amber is that they're not getting, they're kind of steady in the position they're at, so that they're being managed, and that number has been presented in the highlight reports and communicated through the project accountant with accountancy. So that's why it's not red, because it's not a kind of an alarm going off at this point. But they're not in a strong position, as you'll see later.
Okay, are you able to report likely completion date? Are you?
We're currently being told October.
Okay, okay. You referred to one or two issues which we'll come to in detail, but I went and had a look at the site recently, and what's clear is that the quality is very much there. The zinc work, the zinc roofs, the detailing, the space and the layout of the units. These will be real exemplar units, and they will provide, as was always intended, that gateway into Hunstanton. So those aspects I was very impressed with, but we'll move on to the other aspects in the exempt session. So thank you. Oliver, please.
Great, thank you. So the next report is on West Winch. As you'll see, this is mainly green with one amber for resource, and that's really looking at resource for the future steps going forward, which we again will or are looking at internally around how we manage that. Achieved this period, you'll see that NCC formally secured 18.39 million of Homes England brownfield land infrastructure funding back in March during this report. And again, the team here have been absolutely key to a lot of the work going around that. So there's a huge amount of work that's been done internally getting to these key milestones. I think that's the key update I'd say in this report, if there's any points or.
Councillor Murray.
I do have a question, actually, something I perhaps should know the answer to, but I've done a lot of reading on this in the last couple of years, and references made to the F4 or F40 objectives of the Norfolk Suffolk Economic Strategy as a growth location. And I know we'd assigned it as a growth location, but I haven't come across these objectives in the past. That's under strategic fit on the highlights, which we have on page 14.
If I may take that one back to the team and come back to you on that, please.
I know you've been doing a lot of reading as well, so I feel better now that you know the answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oliver, to continue.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to South Gates. So this is the part of the scheme that Kings Lynn, West Norfolk are leading on, and it's looking at the transformation placemaking around the South Gates moving forward. As you can see, this is mainly green. There are some amber risks there, really relating to the impact of the STARS development, which is the next item on the site, and keeping to the master plan as well, and trying to make sure we're moving that forward and actively working forward through there. So there's a number of points that they've moved forward with the team. Essentially, that's where we are on that project. And if there's any questions around that.
Just one, if I may. The expression of interest for the brownfield funding has been put forward. That's the one that requires support of the RMP, which was forthcoming, and very usefully so. Have we got any update on that, or is it we just submitted and we're awaiting an outcome?
We're still awaiting an outcome. We've not received anything yet.
Okay, but that presumably that's key to this whole development, that gap funding, as it were, because there will be a viability gap here, no doubt. The mediation that's needed.
It'll be, if we're unsuccessful, we'll have to review the project and see if there are other funding streams or other delivery mechanisms that could be used. It's not a gateway that maybe if we fail there that it would kill the project, but it would require significant review. Yeah, I think that's all right.
Thank you. Oliver, please.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll move on to the STARS scheme now, which is see the highways work around South Gates. That's led and run by county. As you'll see, this is green on status with a couple of risks around amber and timescales on amber. You'll see in the update, I haven't got a huge amount of update this for here at the moment, but obviously from the report, don't know if there's any questions further on that.
No questions? Councillor Moriarty.
No, we're not scrutiny, but I'm just curious. It says on the bottom again on page 14, the outline business case submission is likely to be May now rather than February due to delays in commissioning the topographical drainage and ground penetrating radar. So I wonder where we are. Do you know where they are with the outline business case submission? And do we know if it's a resource issue? Because presumably it's been known all along that such surveys would be necessary.
I don't have an answer for that. I'll have to find out and come back to you, Councillor Moriarty.
Second strike, thank you.
James, you want to comment?
The only thing that I could add is that the those surveys, the ground penetrating radar, have now been undertaken and completed. I think they're demobilising the last week or so. There were delayed to undertaking them works, largely due to coordinating with all the different businesses, site owners, and finding a gap in the contractor that county required to use in their work programme, but they are now complete.
Thank you. Matthew and then Councillor Parish.
So just to add, there's a bit more than ground penetrating radar surveys been done, so I got involved with James's team. So they're doing some things called window sampling and cores, so actually sort of having a look in depth of the soil and what's in there.
Thank you. Councillor Parish.
Yeah, just an observation that this project comes up at the Transport and Infrastructure Steering Group as well, which I chaired the other week. And highways have got some odd ideas really, because they intend constricting traffic flow by removing a lane that approaches this area of the town. And the justification of it appears to be that if you make traffic flows so awkward, then it will reduce the number of cars on the road. And that's the logic they seem to be using. And I think there might be some public disquiet as this project and its associated roadworks nearby develop. Because it doesn't seem to be the most subtle way of persuading people to use public transport or a bike. Yeah.
So presumably those conversations are going on Ian Parks is the project lead on this, and that's his sort of remit, isn't it? Matthew?
Sorry, Chair, I was just wondering whether perhaps in exempt session we can have a bit more of a conversation about this.
Yeah. As long as we make sure we do cover, because we are talking about, we'll put that to exempt, let's make sure we do cover these things. Someone taking a note, thank you. So if we can do that, Councillor Parish, that would be. Yeah. I don't see any question about that. It'll be there for all to see, isn't it? Won't it? But thank you, Oliver, please.
Yeah, and if I just so that but we do have that conversation around how this sort of works going forward and how that links with other programmes, so that wider strategic plan for highways going forward as well. So we sort of it's understanding what is the impact of the different schemes happening at different points, or when they come along at the same point, how do we manage that risk going forward around traffic, certainly while the project's being done, but then also as part of that move forward to looking at different modes of travel and active travel, etc., going forward, how that then interacts and how we get that movement across. So there's conversations around that, obviously from our point as Kings Lynn West Norfolk, and understanding the impact on Kings Lynn. So
I think it's important that cumulative impact is discussed and managed. It's been made by a number of, that point's been made by a number of councillors, and it's a very good point. Oliver, please continue.
Okay, thank you. I think the next one we move on to is Guildhall. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and the red rag status for this. Do you want me to go into more depth from the questions earlier, or?
I think we've covered it, unless there are any other questions. I think you can move.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move forward on that, and I'll pick up that question from earlier later on as well. So the next one we move forward onto is the Active Clean Connectivity project. Again, this one's amber at the moment. increased risk regarding Tennyson Road. I think that's been on the reports for a while now, and how we look at options to move that forward, or in fact maybe change some of the funding going forward if that doesn't come to fruition. But I think that the wider part of the project is moving forward positively. It's literally the Tennyson Road side that's still a key issue.
Okay, thank you. This was raised at the last Towndale board meeting, and James Wild undertook to pursue this matter. I think there's some frustration around this, but I think here we will attempt to untie that Gordian knot or cut through it, whichever is most appropriate. So perhaps we make sure we're in that loop in that conversation. Okay.
Okay, great. So moving on now to the riverfront regeneration projects. This is currently on amber in this report. As you'll see, there is feedback around the Customs House and pre-app on that, and some opposition to opening up the arcades around from there. I don't know if Matthew, you want to pick up any of those parts?
Yeah, just to refresh your memories, it's sort of in two parts, this project. One is around the Custom House, and then further to the south, there's proposed high quality public realm and event space at Devil's Alley. So Oliver has just referred to the Custom House, and we've been liaising with Historic England on and off for quite some time. We were without a conservation officer for a while, but we'll have one now. And then when we've gone through the sort of formal pre-app process, some of the comments have come back more negatively than the architect had anticipated. We're kind of at RIBA stage 3. So we have a project board this afternoon where we'll be running through this in more detail with the Towndale project board, but we'll be looking to engage further with Historic England and our conservation officer to see if there is a way forward with the external fabric and indeed the internal fabric of the Custom House. So we'll see how that goes from there. Devil's Alley end of the project. So there was a strategic view in terms of planning applications so that we could get moving on certain things. So it's proposed to be split between remediation and demolition works, because the board may recall that we found some basements in the area. So that was going to be one planning application, and there's going to be a second planning application for the rest of the scheme, the actual delivery of the end product, if you like. We've had a slight, I can use the word snafu, with biodiversity net gain issues, which is a relatively new thing that's come in, and even our planning officers are sort of struggling with the interpretation of it as well. So on the forms, if we went for a planning application for the stage 1 works, we would have to say there's actually a sort of a loss of biodiversity because we're stripping off the site, and there would be a requirement to enhance biodiversity. So it may be that we have to rethink things and bundle it into one package, because there is going to be quite a significant biodiversity net gain on the overall project, but not if you split it into two. The first stage will be actually a negative thing. So again, we'll be talking through that with the Towndale project board this afternoon, I believe.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. I think the technical issue at Devil's Alley is frustrating, but will be worked through. It's practicality versus technical process, but the intention is always that there will be the necessary net gain. So that will be worked through. The Customs House, I think there is a reappraisal that's needed, but importantly, that will be, as you say, by the correct engagement with Historic England, and we will probably seek to workshop revised proposals as Historic England would expect, and with reference to the statement of significance that was undertaken by the council at RIBA stage 2. So there will be a delay, but actually I think it's very worthwhile to understand what Historic England believe to be appropriate for that building. Importantly, they have accepted or appear to have accepted at this point, that we can get a lift and some toilets into the building. I hope there is more than that to enable it to be a workable public space. But that in itself is an enormous gain in opening the building up as it should be. The long room, as it's known up there, it's not as accessible as it should be, and it's just a remarkable view and building and room. So I think yes, there are some delays, but you would expect it. This is a very, very significant building and needs to be handled carefully, and that's what's happening. Matthew, further comment, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's during the process, it's amazing how passionate people are about this building. It is a special building. We do want to get it right. So we will be, properly engaging. Well, not that we haven't already properly engaged, we have been properly engaging, but we will engage further with Historic England and the Conservation Officer. And there's other groups as well that have come into the equation as well. It's called SPAB, which is Society of Protection of Ancient Buildings and all this sort of thing. So it is interesting. As I say, the passion of the people of West Norfolk about this building is quite something.
Well, we're often confronted with apathy and no money. In this instance, we've got passion and a budget. So I take that as very good news. Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you. I suppose it's questionable whether under a 2.2 we've got it as amber, whether it should really be red, but maybe people think it's moved on a bit. I know that it says Councillor Beales and Ring, we're going to meet with Simon Thurlow. I think in general terms, we talk about pre-application advice, and I think if lessons learned is that we need to involve, perhaps if we continue with the executive director setup that we have at the moment, that we involve other departments, exec directors, planning at an earlier stage, even before pre-app perhaps, so that we might be able to get some early signals of potential delays and potential opposition.
Yeah, I think there's some merit in that. I'll come to you, Matthew. But I think the issue here appears to me that there was quite some weight put on informal feedback from Historic England. And when the formal feedback, which is what counts, arrived, there were some differences. Now, they are justified by Historic England, and we just have to accept them as they are. But I think there's some merit in what you say. But in this instance, I think it was perhaps, certainly, and I'm only talking to my eye, too much reliance on informal feedback when we needed to await formal feedback. Do you want to come back?
I was thinking more for the future internally. Rather
No. Yes, there is merit to that, I think. Matthew?
Yeah, I just want to say that we have engaged with Historic England throughout the process from the original concept of this idea. There have been changes in personnel within Historic England, and some people had different views. And I would probably agree with you on the reliance on positivity or lack of negativity, hopefully, during this process. And then when the written pre-app advice came in, it was a little bit of a, oh, that's kind of not what we anticipated. But yes, and we've been through lots of meetings, town deal, R&D panel, all this sort of stuff. So the process has been quite involved and gone on for a number of years. So yeah,
the parameters have changed somewhat, but we have very clear formal advice. So we act on that and we move forward. I think that's some. But I take Councillor Moriarty's point, and I think there's merit in that. As we say, no further questions on that. We'll move on, please, Oliver.
Yeah, so we'll move on to the rail to river. Again, this is an amber overall status, mainly around financials, timelines, and issues from that point. The report refers to some delays around the artwork coming forward, and I believe we're still waiting for that timeline.
Well, the artwork is now in the country, and so it's come off a slow boat from Ireland, and so we're just waiting for I think the data we've been given is something like the first week in June, something like that, from the artists. So they're ready to go. We're just moving them, getting them to put it on now on a wagon.
That's great, thank you. So that's all being managed through moving forward. The pop-ups are in place. Again, I believe those are waiting
We're
utilities.
waiting for the core 10. The guys made the core 10 and made a mistake, so they're having to do some adjustments. So that's imminent. The manifestations for the doors, they will only come in once the core 10 is on, so because they match up with are all aligned. The doors themselves have to be adjusted by the manufacturer because they've made them wrong. They've put a stop on so it restricts the width opening. So they only open 800 and they should open 1,000. So we're getting that done as well. But it's all in hand.
Great. So some things picking up through there, but all being managed moving forward. So
Okay. Councillor Parish?
Excuse my puzzlement and ignorance, but I just picked up the word artwork and then island, and I just wondered why we got artwork from Ireland, that's all. Is there a connection between there and Ireland that I don't know about?
No, it's the manufacturer of the steelwork is in Ireland. It's the artists who came forward from the competition, have done all the designs and they've procured it. We didn't have a say in where they bought it from. Or where they had it made, or I mean, we didn't even know Ireland was on the cards until we heard it was on a boat.
Do you want to further question?
They are in Yorkshire.
No,
Councillor Parish?
steel manufacturing areas where I was born, like Ireland, from Ireland.
Okay. The draft licenses for the arch are with Boots awaiting sign off as detailed under the overall status. Any movement on that? Is that complete? Please.
I believe we're still waiting for Boots to put the signature on the thing. They've agreed to everything. It's just getting it signed.
Okay.
Given that we've had the delay with the manufacturer bit anyway, with the cutter being on maternity leave, we can. I'll go back and chase legal.
If you
on
could,
this again.
please. Thank you. Oh.
great. So there's no more questions on there. We move forward to the Much project. Norfolk County Council led Amber mainly around the risks, issues, financials, timescales and resources are green. I believe one of the key issues that we've had under this is around the mast and the impact of the mast. That's certainly been moving forward substantially over that time. So again, I think they're looking to remove the mast and move that across fairly shortly. So we'll update that in the next report, but we've certainly got over some of those key risks there moving forward. So I don't know if there's any questions around that further.
Councillor Moriarty.
Given what you've just said, is it almost it's Amber going green?
That's my feel to it. Yeah. And I think it's that usual difficulty in some of these projects where you've got a lot of unknowns at the beginning, and as you work your way through and the timescale moves forward, you start to work those through and everything's hopefully starts to move towards the green sort of point, so you get more certainty around that. Thank you.
Could that be reported as obviously it'll be reported to the next major project board, but if we can report as soon as possible, because I'm generally optimistic that mast has been moving next week for some time, so if we could just have an update from the county on that.
But we'll get an update to you. Thank you.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. The performance reporting is very much fabric based on how we're building the converting it into a hub. But the project is very much social based in terms of moving it. And I wondered whether or not the scope of the project, as it's reported here, should be widened a bit, really. From a political perspective, it is very important that we understand how this new building is being phased in and utilised, and the obvious elephant in the room is what's happening to the vacant building. And I do, not that that's part of this project per se, but I do think from our perspective as councillors, we should have a wider view of this project. That's it.
I think that's a really good point, and I think generally across the projects as well, maybe something around the social impact. We could pick up on there just so that we understand where those outcomes and are we meeting those social outcomes as well as the financial ones. So yeah, we'll pick that up. Thank you.
But it's an interesting point that, Councillor Morley, because to the Towndale Board, this is a Towndale Board project, as we know, the county do report those aspects, not in great detail, but in some detail as to how they're progressing with proposed use, consultation and the like. So there's no duplication of work there, so it could be a sensible addition as it's been described. So thank you. Oliver, do you want to?
Okay, and the final project on the list is another Norfolk County Council project, which is Boost. I think there's been a number of presentations on this as well, and the impact of that. This is green status, and obviously you've got a number of the performance indicators there. At the Towndale Board, there was a presentation, I believe as well from County around the impact moving forward and how that's impacted from there. I don't know if there's any wider questions people want to pick up.
Councillor Parish?
Yeah, very briefly. When we gave the green light for funding Boost for another year or two or whatever it was, the implication or the statement or the promise was that Boost would extend across West Norfolk. And is that still on track?
Yeah, the project's got a year's funding from the UK SPF fund, and it is being broadened to be the whole of the district for that year. And then in the meantime, officers are working with county on extending it beyond one more year.
Well, we did sub the fund, didn't we, from the borough as well? I remember
Possibly there may have been an element.
I remember agreeing to it, so we must have done.
Yeah, we agreed to it for the UK SPF application, but moving forward, there's no certainty where that funding will go. It may go to the county, in which case, we're very much making the case that this has been a success story. It needs to continue with that. If that funding stream is there, and I would be hopeful. We're never certain, but the numbers are good, and it's a really good project. So. Thank you. Are we done?
Great, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we move to the Nora 4 post-evaluation project report. That's you, James.
Yeah, there's a presentation to accompany this.
Right.
This item, if it could be brought onto the screen. No, this is Nora 4. Yeah.
Do you want to just take 5 minutes to have a cup of tea and cup of break while we
Yes.
sort out the technicalities? Thank you.
Lauren, we've just emailed a presentation through to you.
Lauren, you should have 2 copies of the presentation. If you could share the one from Teams, please.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Sorry, Lauren, can you change it to the PDF that Vanessa sent you, please?
Okay, can we reconvene, please? Mate, could someone shut the door, please? Good. Where are you guys? Right, so we have, yeah, that's it. So it's going on. Ah, there's the wording. Thank you. Okay, could we make some progress, please? Over to you. This is you, James, yes?
It is, yeah. Thank you very much. This is a post-project review of Nora 4 undertaken in accordance with the process that Oliver detailed at the last MMPB meeting. And just before I start, there's a report that accompanies this presentation. The presentation is kind of just some of the key points that I picked out that I thought members would possibly like to question or discuss, but just want to pass my thanks on to Juliana in my team and Vanessa for supporting me through both well, predominantly writing the report. Juliana took a lead on that, and it's a fantastic report. Next slide. So the content is just in accordance with the process that Oliver detailed. Like I said, I picked out a few of the key points. Next slide, please. So just a bit of background on the project. Cabinet recommended to Council back in August 2018 to proceed with the development on Nora 4. At the time, it was recommended that it was an LNG modular scheme. Some members may recall that, and there was a traditional proposal was essentially the backup. A review in 2019 found that the LNG proposal was unviable, and the portfolio holder at the time then kind of reverted the project back to traditional. I think you never know if you made the right call on decisions like that, but LNG closed their modular factory, and people may have seen in the press last December with reported £275 million of losses at the time. So it seems like it was a very sensible decision to move forward with the traditional scheme. Next slide. So just to give members some context, this is the project just as we started essentially. Kind of a vast area of land from that drone image that kind of just behind us is almost click, and you can see other Nora phases in the kind of top right hand corner. Next slide is the project team. I was very proud of this photo. We sometimes, I don't think, celebrate enough as a project team what we achieve. So on the kind of the last day of construction, we invited our supply chain and main subcontractors just to look at what we'd all achieved over the previous years. If there was a video that it kind of drones shoots out. Next slide, and then this is what it looks like from above again, to see that kind of vast area of mud has turned into homes and parking and back gardens, and a kind of already a really kind of vibrant little community. As I've driven past there, I've noticed there's a little cul-de-sac, and they've all got wreaths on their front doors, and they're all trying to outcompete each other for best front garden. It's really pleasing to see when you see pockets like that. And the next, the kind of final context photo is one of the young families that moved in. From memory, we kind of did this on the same day. Just had a chat with a few of the home buyers and who'd come out and take a photo. I think he was at Marham from memory, and had bought one of our houses and was really enjoying living there. See how proud we all are to have met them. So moving on, next slide, please. Moving on to the outputs and outcomes of the project, what did we actually deliver? The goal was to deliver 105 homes over 3 tenures, private rental, open market sales and affordable units. Now, what you'll see there is that we sold slightly less private rental and open market sales units and increased the amount of affordable units so that we could support strategic housing in their delivery of homes for Afghan and Ukraine refugees as part of the local authority housing fund programme. So we delivered the same amount of units, but we mixed the tenures so that we could react to need in the wider authority, which I think is one of the benefits of being able to delivering houses directly. Next slide, please. some of the social value outcomes that I was particularly proud of. We had hoped to hit 5 or 6 apprenticeship or trainees created as part of the scheme. Lovell essentially doubled that. We doubled the amount of school engagements that we'd hoped to achieve. One that we should all be keep an eye on, the amount of waste that we divert from landfill. Almost 100% of the waste that could have been created on site ends up recycled, reused, sorted. The Considerate Constructor scheme, it's an independent review by a third party. We aim out of a 45 is a maximum score. We aim to hit 42, and they had 2 reviews, 43, 43. This means the impact on the local community assessed by a third party was kind of minimised. We outperformed the amount of contractors that we'd hoped to come from Norfolk slightly, so we'd all like to see that even higher. And the amount of SMEs that were employed on the job was very positive. To turn that into, again, a couple of photos. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side, there's a mental health awareness talk. You know, it's very important in the construction industry. It's one of the highest industries for suicide. So we ensure, and Lovell's do a fantastic job of ensuring that there are toolbox talks and outside bodies coming in to support mental health. And on the right-hand side, that was one of the days that Lovell and I went to college to talk to young individuals about career opportunities. Next slide, please. So the financial outputs, and I apologise that this is a horrible kind of to read on that screen. So as we move left to right, hopefully you can see this better in your reports. And we have where we thought the project was going to be a business case, then when we went into contract, then what we actually achieved or we're predicting to achieve, because there's some final internal transactions to take place because of the affordable housing, the fact that they take place with our own companies. And then the right-hand side is what we achieved, A and B. So on what you should be able to see from that total, that final column, is that we pretty much consistently outperformed our revenue goals across every tenure. The only where it was kind of technically negative was where we moved that tenure to the LAF properties. But overall, we made a huge uplift in projected revenue. Costs that with Lovell were initially predicted PPC target at 18.5 million, and we came in at 17.9 million. So not only did we outperform in revenue, we actually delivered a project under budget. So the net surplus was, as we went into contract, and the figure that members were happy for us to go into contract in was £417,000 in return. And what we ended up achieving is 2.849 million. So a very strong project that performed very well. Credit has to go to Lovell for their support in that process, but we work as a partnership to mitigate issues and take opportunities where we think sensible, that we think led to that. Next, back to some of the...
James, before you move on, it may be useful just to explain PPC, what that is, the nature of the contract, and also the intended incentivisation there that may explain the profit share payment that you could question otherwise. If you could just go through that.
Yeah, apologies. I clarify what PPC is in the South End Road report for later on today, thinking they were going to be delivered in the other order, and I didn't think of updating it. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine.
PPC is project partnering contract. It's actually a project partnering contract 2000 that we use with Lovell. Within that, there is a mechanism for them to take a profit share. So anything, if we are in a positive figure, they get to keep 10% of that profit to incentivise them to find savings to help sell the houses at an increased level. And where we've got projects with good profit, that really works. And as you can see, it incentivise them well. So that net surplus is after that profit share payment, which is the line above.
Thank you. Councillor Morley.
Sorry, just thinking at the back of my mind, didn't we get some Section 106 money for the affordable homes for the Afghanistan?
We did, yes.
Has that brought it to it? Is that
essentially that pot goes to strategic housing, and then they buy these using that pot, they buy the properties from us. So this is, they kind of buy them, from the project. So this is reflecting what the project returned. But yes, that additional life properties was supported by that funding. No.
James, could you confirm those additional units, they were sold on normal terms for affordable homes, net present value, or was there any?
No, they were at a market rate.
They were market rate.
Essentially, if they hadn't have bought them from us, they would have bought them from, as they did with a number of the other properties, they would have bought them on the open market. If we hadn't have sold it to them, we would have sold them on the open market.
Okay.
So it's kind of a
transaction. Hardly any financial impact in the way.
No, it was
and a social outcome achieved, as you say. Thank you.
Going back to some of the social value outputs, the chair mentioned earlier, our Creating Communities programme, a programme of interventions to help develop communities where areas of where we're building homes. Kylie Chilvers does a fantastic job of leading that, and members have been invited in the last couple of months to a briefing on that. But essentially, we try and make sure that the new community integrates as quickly as possible into the existing community. That was just a few photos. Little lad with his level hard hat. We move on to some of the risks and issues that I think are worth mentioning. Perfect, thank you. There are a number of risks when we undertake any development like this. Inflation in the materials and labour market over the duration of the project. We mitigate that where we can, especially on sites like Nora, where we've got a lot of land available to us. We're purchasing materials as early as possible and engaging with contractors as early as possible, and kind of tying them into contracts for the duration of the project to mitigate potential increases. This site had particular complexities around the ground engineering. We had to stabilise the ground, which essentially includes digging it out, mixing it with lime and cement, and reburying it again. Very expensive process, but gives us a fantastic base to build from. We had to undertake that on this site, and it's a process we've learned about, and we now continue to do on our other sites. There was some risk around the existing use and existing piles, and because of COVID, Ukraine, and a number of kind of general market problems, there was some risks around the supply chain instability and housing market. And then finally, the ACP funding, whilst it financially supports our programme, comes with expectations to deliver at a pace faster than the normal market would. So that it adds a risk that if we don't meet them targets, our relationship or funding from Homes England could be affected. But we believe that we mitigate them well. Next slide, please. There's a few future activities. The project's done from what we consider a project delivery. Next slide, thank you. But there is some adoptions of the roads, the utilities that needs to be undertaken. Normally you have to wait, you do maintenance for 2 years, then you go for a legal process of handing them over to Norfolk County Council, Anglian Water. But we consider that as kind of business as usual in our team. Some internal adoptions, making sure areas of public open space are at the standard that they need them to be handed over to that team. And then there is the process of establishing management companies and handing those over to residents, so that areas that aren't public open space or aren't owned by an individual are managed, and charges go back to the residents. Associated with that, so there's just, again, some legal processes that need to be completed, but I wouldn't suggest that they require review in 3-4 years when all of those processes have been fully completed. I would suggest, next slide. Oh, sorry, Councillor Morley.
Yeah, Councillor Morley.
Just as it's kind of pertinent at the moment, did Anglia Water provide the specification for the sewers, or did we or Lovells make an assessment of mind that there are other opportunities close to this site, haven't there?
My understanding is that that process is that our engineers undertake a design in accordance with what we expect Anglian Water require. Anglian Water then have an approval process and section agreements that we enter into. So we enter a contract with Anglian Water that essentially says, we're going to build this. If we build it to that, will you take it? They say yes. And then once we've signed, we build to that agree specification.
Yeah, thank you. A good question, but I've had some involvement with this section 104 adoption of sewers, and if you don't get that, the county highways will not adopt it, which is section 278, I think.
Yep.
So the two are interrelated and equally important, because there are developments around without adopted roads, but we don't want to be in that position. So thank you, Joe.
Okay. So I think one of the questions in the standardised process is there a post-project review, a further review to be undertaken? So I don't think we need a specific one to those three future tasks, but I think it is worth doing a review when the major housing programme is drawing to a close, that we undertake a review of the programme as a whole, of which Northall would be just kind of one work stream of that. So, you know, looking at the overall return to the authority, were all the housing delivery outputs met? Was the whole social value outputs did a partnership work? Could we learn from that in the future, etc.
Could I just have some comment on that from the board, as rather than waiting until we think we're at the end point, whether we have an update so far. I mean, some of the earlier projects are some time ago now, but it might be useful. I'm not talking about in depth, but just milestones. We've done this number of projects. This is the net position, and here's the individual position. Would that be useful? Councillor Blunt, you're looking.
My own, if it is worth it in some ways, if it leads to sort of a possible. The problem is when you're doing this, and you're doing it mid process, you may identify something that really is too late. And therefore, and I'm interested in some of the lessons learned. The fact, should we identify them earlier, and then we would have some greater benefit out of it. It's one of those tricky ones. Is it worth doing or is it not worth doing? I think in some, I would on really looking at this, I would suggest it is actually have some sort of mid.
I think if we could do a broad overview that doesn't take too much resource, and then if members find that there are aspects that they think needs further investigation, we could proceed on that basis, perhaps. Matthew, please.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, I mean, we're trying to improve everything across the board, how we deal with it, how we do it, how we report it, how we manage it, all this sort of stuff. And it's a never-ending cycle, if you know what I mean, because there will always be things crop up that nobody knew about. And basically what we want to do is say, like, James learns a lesson on this project, other people who are bringing other projects forward learn from that, rather than us make the same mistake again. And I think that Vanessa and whoever want to bring forward, we all want to bring forward that sort of process, so that we just keep on an upward trajectory of improvement.
Thank you. That's useful. I've got Heather and Oliver that would like to speak. Councillor Moriarty has a question, I think.
No, as somebody who's project managers is far too grand a term. As somebody who's overseen nothing grander than an extension in the past, I was curious about the quality issue, and you know, in terms of extension, the Lecky said, we say to Lecky on the Friday, see you Monday. He said, no, I'm done. I'm not coming back. And I almost sort of got the feel for that there was a quality issue. But is that connected to the other point about risk, supply chain instability? Obviously, there was a limited choice of subcontractors anyway. So is there a lesson to be learned, or is this just one of those things that happens?
That can I respond to that when we talk about, when I go through the lessons learned, just to pick up on a few of the points about is it worth doing now? More than happy to obviously do that. I touch on that in my report on Southend Road later, because I think it was important when we talk about Southend Road to understand the context of the programme. There are a number of lessons learned from this project that automatically get built into our day-to-day processes. I mentioned earlier the PPC contracts, the project partnering contracts. A project partnering contract is entered for each project that we do, a separate contract. Every time we tweak the terms, learning from the projects that are in contract at the time. You don't want to repeat the same mistakes, or you want to change your risk profile slightly. And Lovell's worked with us to amend them. Obviously it's a push and pull process, but we do ensure that learning is kind of throughout the process. I think it is important, Vanessa mentioned earlier about a piece of a system that we're trying to build to do with project management. It's very important that that includes a lessons learned section to it. And I also think, you know, it's possibly a bit of a tangent from this, but we're also looking at an internal intranet as an authority. And I think some lessons learned bulletins to project managers around the authority that essentially tie in with that system could be really valuable in communicating as we do go through projects. So I think, as Matthew rightly said, that we're on a journey of improvement. It is going on in the background. Okay, so sorry, does that answer all the?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. And Heather, you wanted to speak?
I was just going to sort of reiterate what Matthew was saying about sort of, and James, about, you know, learning as you go, especially, you know, when you start up a new project, that's the time to review the overall at the same time, and to roll in and formalise any updates to that at that time.
Okay, thank you. Useful input, Oliver. I think you're James. You carry on, please.
Yeah, and learning is really is very efficient when you're in a partnership because you can learn from each other. So just to go on to the key lessons that we identified. To start with, the quality was acceptable on site, but it was delivered during a time there was a lot of competition in the market. Contractors were getting offers from others. They'd go there for a couple of days. They were juggling multiple sites at the same time. It's almost inevitable and almost uncontrollable. But we made sure that we put in place. You know, we're really lucky as a project delivery authority to have 2 clerk of works that are on site every day, every week, looking in the units and making sure that the quality that is being delivered is being achieved. The learning we took from that is making sure that subcontractors' terms are slightly adjusted and that they provide some direct supervision to make sure that we're not level and not having to directly chase the labour. There's the subcontractor provides the supervisor that helps coordinate that. It's a bit of a lesson that Lovell learned that we want to ensure that they implement in the future, as opposed to something that we can directly do. Other lessons, the programme, it was a difficult period for the supply chain. I think we had 2 or 3 subcontractors, much smaller than the groundworker that we discussed on the project, went into administration during that process, but we managed to pivot quite quickly and find other trades because they were easier trades to procure, but it did lead to delays. We learned a number of lessons around modern methods of construction. The first 24 units we used a system called iHouse, in which instead of individual concrete blocks, it's like the whole section of wall comes in as a single block, so you can build a house much quicker. The bricklayers then lay on the outside while people are on the inside. The idea is that cuts down the overall period of construction. So whilst the material might be slightly higher, the costs associated with the time you're on site are slightly lower, but we didn't really realise that benefit. We don't think it's worth doing that again. We want to continue to explore other methods of modern methods of construction, modular, that might have greater benefits to the project in the future. And then the last lesson, and I think it's an opportunity that we've missed too often in the past, is that when we do these sites, often they were large areas of grass. The public open space came in and cut 2-3 times a year. We deliver these developments. Public open space, their responsibility is diminished by metres squared because they then only have to cut the much smaller park that they are responsible for. But for example, they need to cut that park every 2 weeks, every month, and make sure the play equipment's correct. So what we don't want to do is create issues for other departments. So we need to make sure that there's money within the project to pay commuter subs to other teams, and we need to better agree those with those internal teams instead of creating problems for them.
Would that not be captured by Section 106 in normal circumstance?
It would, and public open space have the opportunity to request that, and they've chosen not to in the past. But right. So it's not an error, but it's an opportunity that we think we can improve as a local authority.
Okay, thank you.
That I believe concludes my presentation, but happy to take any questions.
Councillor Blunt.
Yeah, I was confused. Well, I'm disappointed that we didn't manage to get any measurable benefits out of the iHouse, if I'm honest. You know, I was part of this project at that stage and watched some of the first ones being installed. And was it more to do with the scheduling of the labour around it rather than the actual iHouse process? Because the iHouse process was quite a short process in real terms, which gave an opportunity for the bricklayers to come in, the internal people to come in much quicker. But and you say it did, I suppose, did reduce the overhead costs, but we didn't get any real measurable benefits. I'm confused.
Yeah, I'm disappointed as well that it didn't provide great results. I think the problem was that we committed to doing part of the site with it in the hope that it would accelerate the first kind of phase of the project, and therefore the benefit would run through the whole project, where in reality the gains that we made at the beginning didn't really roll through the whole contract. If we'd have done all 105 units with the system, there would have been there would have probably been significant time saving that would have saved on our preliminary costs, but the increased cost of the product would have again made it kind of neutral or negative. So I think just in this case, it's a shame it didn't work, but it's not to say that we wouldn't even try using it again, but we'd be careful in how we selected it, where we used it. The other benefit of using the iHouse, in which it probably is a benefit, but it doesn't kind of return to figures, is that because the first phase of housing was quicker, we got a show home opened quicker, which meant we could start sales quicker, which there is a benefit to starting to selling quicker, especially if you're in the market is very strong and you want to kind of get them sales in. But again, whilst that took place, it probably didn't have an outcome to the total amount of revenue we got from the project. Councillor Blunt, do you want to follow?
Yeah, so if we'd have used the iHouse all the way through the whole project,
yeah,
would we have delivered the project quicker?
Yes, but it would have cost more.
It would definitely cost more.
Yes.
What was the reason behind that?
Because the iHouse, the iHouse product as an alternative to blocks is higher than just buying the blocks.
The time it saves
doesn't outweigh that.
So in theory, in some ways, the iHouse principle failed.
Yes.
But you're saying it would have helped if we'd have extended it further.
I don't think it would, but possibly.
That's very disappointing because we did a lot of research on that particular issue, and we were led to believe that it would actually speed up the process. And actually, no one really mentioned the fact that it was a more expensive solution to building those huge blocks as opposed to the conventional block building.
Yeah. I think it's been a useful exercise, isn't it? Because it'll inform going forward, and it would be wrong to rule that out in looking at any new project. But the lessons learned here will inform going forward. These are SIPs, I see, structural insulated panels type thing.
No, they are essentially built like a block.
Okay.
But instead they come in possibly 1.2 wide, the full height of a floor. Okay. And they're kind of glued and pinned together. So
I think the wider point is we look at this because we've got 45 minutes left unless we extend. So unless there are comments on this, I think the answer is, as you say, Councillor Blunt, there are lessons learned here. It didn't turn out as we expected, but there may be reasons for that. We need to explore again if we look at another project. Matthew, do you want to comment on this?
Just very quickly, I mean, obviously, there's a lot goes on in the housing market, timing, rising market, falling market, and I think the organisation needs to be open to adaptability and change to suit what's going on. So, possibly looked at the way the market was heading, actually delivering more units at that point in time might not be the right thing, slow down the process so the market picks up again. So I think there's got to be that adaptability rather than sort of steadfastly stick to something just because we started it.
Okay, thank you. Point well made. Oliver and councillor Morley. My warning over time went well. And Heather, sorry, Heather.
I mean, I was going to talk a bit generically. I don't know if these are specific questions.
Sorry, I was going to say about quality, the time, cost and quality of the product. So, you know, what you may gain by having something that's prefabricated actually improves on the quality of the product ultimately, as well as time.
Yeah, all part of the lessons learned. Councillor Morley, yeah, question?
Oh, just briefly, thank you, Chair. I wonder if there's any benefit in these lessons learnt being discussed with the construction college as whether or not they've, you know, the tutors there have got some experiences or etc. I know on the internet it says what's the cheapest form of domestic and property construction. It says brick and block. But,
It's a good idea, and we engage with the college quite frequently, so I'll raise it with them.
Okay, thank you. There are the question's been raised about design. Modular construction generally works to build a big box and build it high. If there's appetite for that from cost grants, you know, that needs to be explored as part of an ongoing future project, perhaps. Where are we? You're moving on. Oliver, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so it's just that overall sort of point. First of all, we've talked a lot about the wider projects and looking at continual improvement. And I think we've talked a lot here about the PMO. So I just wanted to say we're moving that forward. Hopefully that will be in place very soon. The key part of that is making sure that we're coordinating between all those different projects. And as James was saying, you know, also there's projects happening in the wider organisation. So how do we pull that together? Vanessa's been working hard with James, etc., on a system, trying to improve that going forward. And all of this can come together. I think it's been here for over a year being discussed, but bring that together so that we can make sure we get all those benefits sort of worked through. So that is happening.
Good to see some progress. Well, we need to see progress next time, ideally. Thank you. James, you done?
Yeah. Sorry, yes, I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very useful. Thank you for all the work that went into that, you and your team. Some lessons to be learned, as we say. We now move to the Officer Major Project Board minutes, which I think were published as a supplement. Yeah, are there any comments on theirs? Any highlight points that officers may want to make, or do we move on? Thank you. We'll move on. We turn to the work programme, which is page 103 to 105 of your agenda. And so far on there, we have, for the meeting of 12th of August 2024, project planning engagement with the Customs House, report relating to the Guildhall CIO, focus project presentation, Guildhall, and the overview of process and definition of projects that Vanessa referred to earlier. Vanessa, do you want to comment on that?
If I may, Chair, sorry, I think the first item has been captured slightly incorrectly. It was a request from you that we looked at how projects engaged with planning and conservation, which actually I nearly chipped in with that earlier.
Massive point.
Yeah, I nearly chipped in with that earlier, but I knew it was on the forward work programme, but it hasn't been captured quite correctly, so we'll just correct that. But that's the intention, that it will be a piece of work we'll bring to you that talks about how projects engage with planning and conservation early.
I think that would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oliver?
Yeah, and if it's okay with the board, if I could, I'll put on an update for the PMO there and recruitment around that as well.
Yep.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we just note that next meeting, which is the 12th of August 2024, 9:30 here. And we move on to Southend Road, the non-exempt items. James, is that correct?
Yeah, but as you know, Modern Officer has undertaken a review of this presentation, and there's only very small elements that have been moved to exempt session. Okay, so we'll move to exempt session. Well, this presentation is meant to be in public.
Fine, let's do that. Thank you. Sorry, I misunderstood you. Through that.
Is that an issue with the fact that I sent it as a PDF? that be zoomed in or?
Lauren, can you zoom that in at all?
That's how it's printed.
Yeah, I think it's
Oh, right.
PDF.
Can I send?
I don't think I can zoom it, unfortunately.
Yeah, just do that a bit more, please, slightly more.
It is on our agendas, isn't it? So basically we can
So
follow through.
apologies, that's not, it's not even more clear, but I'll run through anyway. So this is a focused presentation on Southend Road as requested by Member Major Project Board. The content is largely in accordance with the pre-agreed process. The only thing I'd add is I've restructured it to move things about slightly with the support again from Vanessa to I think there were some items I thought earlier in the presentation helped provide context to areas further down. Next slide. So as I've said, MMPB asked for a detailed presentation, including information on timelines, the financial position and key issues. The Southend Road site, just in case there's any confusion, and the presentation has the market name of Starman Court, named after Henry Lestrange, Starman Lestrange. So next slide, please. The project interfaces with a number of other work streams, major housing programme, the companies, the West Norfolk Housing Company Limited, who are taking 4 affordable units, 2 affordable rent and 2 shared ownership properties, the Homes England Accelerated Construction Programme, and the Southern Seafront Master Plan. So I'll just comment on the Southern Seafront Master Plan first on the next 2 slides. So when this project was initiated, the authority was going through the Southern Seafront Master Plan, and this project was seen as an opportunity to set a standard of quality for any development that we do in that area of the town. Whilst the master plan process, I think I'd describe it as paused, the quality expectations that master plan set out, we've tried to adhere to. The vision of that master plan was, I'll put them on the presentation, town that meets the needs of its residents, a more attractive seaside destination, a town that makes the most of its setting and natural assets. I think they're probably good aspirations for any project that we undertake in Hunstanton, to be honest. The next slide, we looked at the economic impact of the project to the town, because there was a lot of concerns early on with the impact that it would have on the loss of parking. We undertook an internal calculation, which is appended to the planning consent, but I can provide to members in case they'd like to scrutinise. But we calculated that there'd be a per annum positive gain on the local economy of about £277.6 thousand per annum. So that kind of gives you kind of the quality why. Next slide, please. So just talk a bit about the major housing programme more in general. So we have a Lovell Partnerships Limited, LPL, are our development partner. This isn't a traditional main contractor. They work in the borough on schemes with ourselves and also on their own schemes, the Hunstanton care schemes, some may be aware of, and with other partners, including Freebridge and wider in this area. Probably their biggest relationship is Suffolk County Council. They're part of Morgan Sindall Group, one of the largest main contractors in the country. 3.2 billion turnover in 2021, 6,600 employees. But they have a kind of a regional team headed up by Simon Medler, and have a very strong local presence. It is a true partnership, not like I said, not a traditional main contractor. It's open book, honest, friendly relationship, and it is quite unique in the construction industry. It's a model that they've tried to promote with others. Next slide. This again looks a bit complicated, especially when it's zoomed out. I apologise again. There's 2 contracts that govern our relationship. All is overseen by OMPB and MMPB. Obviously, this project was initiated before the MMPB process. We have a development management agreement which takes us through everything before we start building works. So as we undertake the design and we get the kind of it approved in that way, get planning, then we go into contract. And as I mentioned earlier, we use a PPC, Project Partnering 2000 contract. Next slide, please. Just to, okay, sorry how small that is. The project team is the kind of corporate projects team. We're then supported by, and we can do it without, a number of other teams within the council: strategic housing, comms, legal, Matthews Henry property team. And then we manage Lovell on Southend Road specifically, Lovell as the design team, and they then manage their subcontractors. We have William H. Brown as our estate agents, a company called Gately are our solicitors, and Rounce and Evans are lined up to be our block management company. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Councillor
May
Murray.
I just ask what block management means?
So once the property is complete and all the residents have moved in, they will take responsibility on behalf of the residents to do the window cleaning, cleaning in the communal areas, manage the parking areas, and do kind of those services on behalf of all the residents.
So is there a management company as part of the final setup as well? In which case, why is this sort of imposed, if you like?
So the management company, there's a management company which is a legal entity that will eventually, I expect, own the freehold of that property. That management company will be owned by the residents. The block management company is the company that then that management company appoints to undertake the physical day-to-day management activities. That means that the residents become essentially their client, so that they can choose, okay, we're not getting a good service, we could change, we want twice as many window cleans a month, we want half as many window cleans a month, so they can increase or decrease their service charge without us having any impact. But what we need to do is we set that up for them so that on day one, all them processes are already in place, and that they have an understanding of the standard service charge they'll have from day one. So we've made a number of decisions saying they're going to be 6 window cleans a year, and there's going to be a gardener there twice a month. And so we can say, we expect on day one, your service charge will be X per month. They can make an informed decision on that if that's acceptable, and whether they want to purchase or not purchase. That's really important, because we have to, we're in a transitional phase, but we're registering with the New Homes Quality Board, which is an independent ombudsman, and make sure that when we sell properties, we are doing it to the highest possible standard. That is one of the requirements of that scheme.
Thank you, really clearly expressed, thank you.
Where was I? Sorry. Just to talk about what the major housing programme is hoping to deliver overall. Obviously, homes, financial and economic opportunities to the local supply chain, local companies, a number of environmental benefits over other developers. We build a higher quality, we believe, up to a higher quality than others in the area to set us a benchmark, and deliver a number of social benefits. To date, we have Sorry, just
would have had
okay.
No, fine.
Okay. In development or completed with Lovell at about 809 homes. Next slide, please. Just to give some financial context again to the partnership, I'm afraid I've had to redact a number of numbers on this. But what's really important is when we went on the left-hand side, we went into contract with Lovell with a target profit on each scheme. Orchard Place, that was 1,048,000. The total profit in the actual was 1.25 million. So we exceeded our expectations by 206,000. You can see, as on the left-hand side, we've gone into contracts where we expected to make a profit, and this has allowed us to also take risk on other projects where we've gone to in knowing that we're likely to make a loss. So Florence Field is projected in that when we went into contract, and Linsport 1 is projected in that. If you add all those up, we expected to make 1.4 million on the programme. That's really important because it spreads our risk. It makes sure that we can deliver to a number of different goals, different areas of the borough, not just focus on certain projects. Whilst I've had to redact a few figures, the bottom right-hand number is what we're now projecting to make over and above what members signed off in contract is 1.26 million. Now, so that is additional profit into the borough as a result on top of what we projected, taking into account that the project that we're going to talk about today has been extremely difficult, and that members are selected to go into Florence Fields and Linsport 1 in a negative position. So that shows overall the partnership has really, I believe personally, has really delivered for the borough. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Again, I've mentioned social value benefits. I'm not going to go through these one-on-one because I am conscious of time, but in 2022.
I miscalculated time. We've got till 12:30 for 3 hours, and we're actually in the diary till 1. Let's keep focusing on getting on, but you've got a little more time.
I'll breathe. Thank you. We do these year by year, these social benefits, but Southend was one we were looking at in Nora 4. We're constantly delivering social value outputs. We've already mentioned them in the Nora 4 presentation. Apprenticeships, people being paid the living wage, amount of waste diverted for landfills, some really positive outputs to the local people, our local businesses, local people. Next slide, please. Again, I love pictures because you can see more from them. We raised in 2022, for example, 9,000. We did a sponsored run. We did 4 school engagements. I think that photo of myself looking slightly thinner was taken at KLA when we picked the name Florence Fields. You've seen the bottom left-hand and bottom right-hand images to do with the college and mental health conversation. So there's some really valuable benefits to the programme overall. Now to focus on Southend Road. Start Court. So this is the delivery of new homes in Hunstanton, the first that the borough has pursued in the town within the major housing programme. They are apartments that aim to have a positive visual and architectural impact, setting a standard for development in that Muscon area that I've mentioned, and have a positive local impact, as I again mentioned earlier. The outputs, next slide please, thank you. The outputs of this site aim to be 32 apartments over a number of sizes, and as I said, a number of tenures with affordable rent and shared ownership included there. The project also includes access, cycle storage, the infrastructure and lands that required for the site, adaptations to the roads, electric, sewerage, and landscaping that immediate area. Next slide, please. This is a bit of a repeat of that, but it includes a few. What the project does include is also appointment of the estate agent, appointment of the block management company, a creating community event that we'll undertake towards the end of this project, establishment of all the legal mechanisms to construct that management company. What the project excludes is the ongoing management of those properties to be undertaken by the management company that we've already discussed. Next slide, please. So there is what we hope the scheme will look like when delivered. We hope that it does meet that quality aspiration. TV's going to turn itself off. Who's got the remote?
So which one it is?
And the next slide shows, this is a drone shot from about a month ago. We are really close to, well, part of the scaffold has now started to come down and it does look absolutely fantastic. I think from a quality point of view, we are meeting the aspiration we've had since the very beginning. And I think Councillor Beales, you kind of spoke on that earlier. Next slide, please. To give the strategic fit according to the current corporate strategy, it kind of fits with the area to create jobs, support local economic growth, develop skills, and increasing the number of good quality homes within the borough. So it does, it remains, even change of administration, something that we believe kind of meets current strategies. So next slide, to discuss the programme, which is one of the specific areas where we've had difficulties. So we originally were planned to start in April 22. but we didn't start until June 22. In the end, for some short delays at the beginning of the project. So that was, we initially estimated a 78-week build program. However, this has come past. There has been a 12-week delay because of remediation. The ground conditions, we foresaw them being an issue. We all knew that it was a former station at the end of the station. Trains will have stopped there. Waste, coal, diesel will have ended up in the land beneath us, and we expected that. The 12-week delay largely related to the volume of what we found to be in very poor condition, but specifically having to take it to capture that, send it to a testing site, wait for the test results, get them back, then we could remove that pile, and then having another pile where we kind of dug the next pile out, take a sample of that. It was a slow process. I think there was at the time problems in getting that tested effectively or quickly because of capacity in that area of the market. There was a 23-week delay for some LABC tanking, which is essentially a basement detail. There isn't a basement in the property, but there are voids under the property that we didn't believe needed to be treated as basements. But when LABC, which is our warranty provider, came to inspect, they said, no, we believe that you need to treat these as a basement, even though they're uninhabitable and inaccessible. Doing those works was incredibly simple. Finding an accredited tanking designer and installer that met the LABC as the warranty provider's requirements was very difficult. So there's the 23 weeks there, 17 weeks of weather. It's a very exposed site. We need a crane to build things. If it's windy, we're not using the crane. And then 5 weeks at the end is dormer details. Essentially, the quality of this product, we're using zinc on the dormers. Normally, you buy a dormer, you buy a GRP off a shelf, pre-manufactured off-site, goes on the roof, lifting in on a single day. The detailing to do the zinc on-site has been incredibly difficult, and I think Lovell under anticipate how long that would take. Again, the difficulty isn't the building of it, it's building it to our expectations, because we want something that looks good. We're trying to hit these quality requirements that CNC Building Control are happy with, that Lovells can build, that the contractor can build, that the contractor's zinc supplier will warranty, because they will only allow them to use certain bends and folds, and LABC as our warranty provider. That's what I think the 5 weeks delay was, going round in, not circles, but trying to manage that communication and find a solution that met met the full range of everyone could sign it off, which has now been done. And again, they look fantastic. Sorry,
James, what's the ground conditions? A bit of a surprise. I do remember extra drilling, and that the houses up the road, the name now, which I forget, complained about the vibration that they were receiving from the. That delay.
That related to piling
coming in.
We the site, as members might know, when they remember it as a car park, the road is higher than the car park. We had to retain and support the road whilst undertaking the construction works. When we drove them sheet piles in, there were complaints, which did cause a small amount of delay, but it was absorbed within. Essentially, that delay overlaps with other areas of delay, but predominantly the remediation, essentially. But yeah, there were complaints, but I think it probably only delayed us 2 or 3 days while we paused to make sure that we weren't causing unnecessary disruption. I think members might remember at the time that there was a lot of local concern. What we did, we put on a consultation event. We invited everyone in the community to understand what we were doing, why we were doing it, what impact it might have on their house. I think we invited 100 houses, 3 people turned up, but that, which is, fine. And they were satisfied with the information they provided. Oh, well, sorry, I should have moved on to the next slide where I kind of just talked through each of those, but essentially that's what I've just discussed. Those kind of delays, are being reviewed by the team at the moment to of their kind of contractual position. We're in conversations with Level as our partner on those delays. So there are further risks. Sorry, next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. Whilst we've done majority of the ground remediation, there is a parking area that needs to be completed. So we'll have to see the impact that has. Because we've still got some months left, if there are any more materials needed, we are exposed to potential cost inflations. And that includes areas of the subcontractors' orders, which if they weren't on a fixed price. There's risks relating to supply chain availability. As we approach the summer months, the material storage we have on the opposite coach park will have to be removed to allow for visitors to the resort. We don't like double handling materials. They get damaged, they get lost. And it's just, you know, it's a unnecessary cost, but so there's a bit of a risk if they've still got materials need storage. The program delays we've already discussed. Whilst we're, you know, these delays and cost increases that we'll come on to, they're not comfortable for the partnership. So there's always the risk that our relationship takes a knock because of these issues. And there are risks and issues related to the sales process. So if I just briefly touch on sales, next slide, please.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Councillor Murray.
If I may, and again, if it's appropriate later in the meeting, that's fine. Open purchase orders for level purchase materials. That's not been mentioned, has it, elsewhere as a risk and issue? Why is it specifically here?
Because the situation the project's in already being in the red, it's higher on the risk register than on a project that's doing very well, on which we've got contingency to absorb any material or labour inflation.
Does that answer your question?
I may have phrased it badly. I may have phrased the question badly. So open.
Probably answered it badly.
Open purchase orders for level purchase materials, meaning everybody can see in general, and therefore there's a risk that the prices will get bumped up. But that presumably is a problem with any site with levels, but it's just more, you're identifying it here because everything's a bit more marginal.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So just to talk about sales, marketing has kind of softly commenced. We have had significant interest from local and national purchasers. There doesn't seem to be a concern over the prices, but everyone is keen to see a show home, which is what we've not got at the moment partly because of the delays. Access to show homes is really difficult while development progresses essentially on health and safety grounds. So what we're doing at the moment is working with Lovell to bring a show home forward in the programme. So next weekend, or possibly the weekend after, there is going to be an accompanied tour. So Lovell will be there, the estate agent will be there. People who've put their name on the waiting list will be shown to a finished show home. So to try and kickstart that interest. A full-time show home will be delivered, I think, June, July, where William H. Brown will have the key, access from the road, can get in and out all day without the need for PPE. And we think that's when sales will really kick off.
Councillor Parris has a question, I think.
I was waiting for this bit, and you just meant interest from local and national buyers. The reason this thing got through planning committee was that it was going to be for local people. Certainly wasn't going to be for second homes, and it certainly wasn't going to be for holiday home. So
My next slide.
right, okay, I'm just making sure I do this. I'm consistent about it.
No, we're to supplement the show homes. We've got CGIs created for the flats, so that even if someone can't see their exact flat, they can see the show home and they can see the CGI of theirs. You know, they could even put if they had them, kind of the headsets on and walk around their flat. But that's for them if they choose, if they've got that technology. And there is a local connection criteria in place. So to answer your question, councillor, next slide, please. So sorry, this is poor PowerPoint etiquette, but I thought I'd put it in the presentation in detail in case you need to refer back to it in the future. So at present, there is no ability in our borough to put a local occupation restriction on the planning condition. It was, you would have to, my understanding of it is, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting my planning colleagues, is that you have to have a policy within your local plan or somewhere within the planning hierarchy of documents that allows you to put that restriction in place. And we don't have that as a borough. So essentially it was a political decision to have a local connection criteria put in place in these properties. So we've tackled that, member asked in two ways. So what we can do is put a legal restriction on the property that stops them being used for anything other than the principal residence of the property. So they can't be used as second homes, they can't be used as Airbnbs, they can't be sublet. So that kind of controls that side of the problem. The issue to do with are they local or national is more difficult to control. You can't put that on the legal title. What we don't want to do is sell it on day one to Mr. Smith in Hunstanton and then have no, because in reality on day two, he can just sell it straight on to Mr. Jones from Birmingham for the uplift in value. Yeah. For example, other cities are available. That uplift, they could sell it on with an uplift because there'd be an uplift because the marketing isn't been, because with restricting the market, you possibly restrict the price. So what we've done is as we've done successfully on other developments, we put in a marketing strategy. So what we've said to William H. Brown is that we'll only accept offers from people who live within the borough, people who have previously lived within the borough, people who work within the borough or are being transferred here for work, have a family member in the borough, live on the fringes because, for example, Wells is not within our borough, but probably they're geographically more closer than people on the outskirts of Wisbech, for example. So it's kind of local, and we can assess that on a case-by-case basis, and an exceptional reason that I've not thought of. And what our plan is that is our marketing approach for the first 12 weeks once a show home is live. So the local buyers have 12 weeks to essentially have first dibs on those properties, and then should members allow, we'll open it up to the wider market. That mitigates that risk of unscrupulous investors uplifting.
Councillor Moriarty. Thank you for that, James. A very good explanation.
Just going back to your day one and day two, I don't see how this gets over that problem. I take the point that we probably have to have it in our local plan, the next iteration, in order to be able to do it through the planning process. But the way it's described here, day one and day two isn't, as a scenario, isn't stopped.
It doesn't completely resolve it because we can't see a way of completely resolving it. But what it does mean is, why would a national buyer buy it from Mr. Smith on day one when he knows in 12 weeks' time it's likely that he can buy it straight from the borough?
Thank you.
Matthew?
Sorry, it's just popped into my head. I mean, James might want to talk to legal about clawback deeds of covenant, which transfer from one owner to the next. And basically, the original vendor could claw back some of the uplift if somebody does try to do something like that. So it might be worth having a chat with legal about that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Councillor Parish?
Yeah, can I underline that fact that Matthew has just made? Because all I can see is that the intention of the planning committee is being bent somewhat. And it may have to bear into a local plan, but it was a policy decision at planning committee because I made it. So I do know what was said. But there we are.
Okay, thank you. Point well made.
Next slide, please. So, financial position, most difficult part of the presentation. So, development costs have raised approximately 1.3 million. They're under review, they're under constant review, which has pushed the project, which initially was in a marginal profitable position, into a negative one. So development costs, which started in the 6 point something million, are now at about 8.7. What we've not done is increased our estimates on what we're going to sell these properties for. The revenue has stayed the same. Clearly, if costs continue to rise or we don't achieve our sales targets, the project will be further negatively impacted. Conversely, if we make some savings or we manage to sell the properties for higher than we're currently forecasting, that figure will reduce. My expectation at the moment, purely a personal informal view, is that we will slightly better that position, but not significantly. Just to show where those costs have increased on the next slide, please. This, I don't know if everyone's got a colour printout, but the top line, the one that's gone up 20.4%, is subcontractor costs. Subcontractors, when they tendered these works, once Lovell had been appointed, and I can explain the mechanisms around that, but I'll do that in exempt session, have increased significantly than what we expected when we went into contract. I think there's a few reasons for that. Hunstanton is a difficult place to build as a developer, because when the market is busy, it's that extra trip from King's Lynn. There's no hotels there. The material that you've got to use is, and we've selected to use, is of very high quality. Your standard bricklayer isn't laying the cast stone that we're using, and they're not doing so to the cost we would expect. And so I think there were underestimations on what we would spend with subcontractors, and those have bitten us now. The 17.7 is preliminary costs. Prelim costs. So the cost that those delays have had, as we've had to pay for the work, if there's a delay, we pay for that delay essentially.
You'll go into that in a bit more detail perhaps in the exempt session, perhaps.
I can do, but essentially it's the cost of those. There's two kinds of delays. There's delays that are that we have to cover because they were unforeseeable. It would be unfair to pass that cost on to the contractor. For a good example of that is if there's a legislation change midway through the contract that no one could foresee, it falls to us as a client. If there is a delay which is the fault of negligence or equivalent, clearly they would fall with the contractor. Yeah. There, as I said, with those delays, there's conversations ongoing, but this kind of absorbs them into that figure. And I think the next slide is just a repeat of the one that I gave earlier. Yeah, apologies. So that's kind of the broad brush financial update. We can dive into in exempt session in further detail. Just to kind of finish on comms and stakeholder engagement, to follow essentially the format of these focused presentations. We do a quarterly newsletter drop to all nearby properties. We've had engagement with local councillors. We have an open door event on the 16th of March. That date is wrong, I apologise. I think that's meant to say the 16th of May. We did presentations and competitions with, oh sorry, no, that was last year, wasn't it? 16th, yes, there was an open doors event with the local community on the 16th of March last year, so that anyone in the town could go and see what we're building. We did a presentation and with the primary school. We try and do this more to go into the schools, tell them about careers, but they're primary school children, and we really talk to them about health and safety. Make sure that they know in the summer holidays not to go play anywhere near our sites. We had Mental Health Awareness Week. We've done bee and bird box demonstrations, and there's been a number of press articles promoting sales, including on the MH Brown's website. So to conclude my presentation, next slide, please. Build complexity, cost and programme have been much more challenging than we originally expected. This, coupled with the project's location, has limited supply chain ability and increased costs. Limited growth in the housing market has not mitigated project issues. Essentially, on some other projects, as you saw with Nora 4 earlier, not only did we save costs, but actually we had house price inflation that would have helped cover cost inflation if that had happened. We haven't had this in this site. The partnership is working to mitigate all those issues where possible, and negotiations are ongoing with Lovell to mitigate the impact to the authority. But it's paramount that while cost and programme goals have been missed, that we are aiming to maintain a really high level of quality. We don't want to miss all three of that kind of time, quality, cost triangle that was mentioned earlier. Project remains, there are several risks, but they are being managed by the team. And we do believe that whilst really, again, a challenging site, it's been a challenging project, that actually within the wider programme, the programme remains successful in delivering on its goals. Next, final slide before questions. Lessons that we've already identified and are working towards. The ACP funding, delivering at pace, has possibly limited opportunities for some scrutiny that we should have done. You know, when we're expected to deliver so much faster than the market, and we've got that funding in, we've been told we've got to spend it. We have to make good decisions, and I hope that if we were to review, every decision that we made was the right decision at the time, but more time would have always possibly helped that decisions. It's complex, and we should probably review, if we were going to do something similar, flats. Do we want, is it right to build so close to a conservation area? There is more and more risk associated with developing flats from fire risk. That's an area where costs have been high. Proximity to the sea increases complexity. Everything, you can't use steel, everything has to be stainless steel. Everything has to be detailed to allow for the spray off the sea, even that far back. They've increased cost, and it is a very exposed location to the weather. Things that we probably should have explored more in that design process, and we can't think we hold our hands up to that as a partnership. The contractors team is key to success, and all staff involved need to have a strong experience delivering this project type. I think there's been discussions around was the correct team from Lovell in place, but we're best discussing that in exempt session. I believe that the best team is in place at the moment to finish the project out. It's a very high architectural quality project, and that can critically impact on the supply chain stress, as I mentioned. But the programme, as I'll keep coming back to this point, the programme allows us to take these riskier jobs on to meet wider corporate goals, not just the kind of financial goal that we had. Thank you for listening to what's quite a long presentation. Thank you to whoever's doing the next question, please. That's very, very good. Next slide, please. There's a number of slides in exempt. There's 2 or 3 slides that I'll just share in exempt session. So I'll answer whatever questions I can in this session, but there may be some that I'll revert to exempt if needed.
Thank you, James. That, as we know, not all good news by any means, but there is good news, but an excellent presentation, a lot of work there. So thank you for that. If there are, we've taken a lot of questions on the way through, but if there are any further questions, Councillor Moriarty.
Thank you. On the cost increases, materials and preliminaries were roughly neck and neck. Would you say that going for the accelerated construction programme, because we had to get a lick on to some extent, that's meant that if we hadn't done so, the materials would have been even higher, even greater increase than 17%.
Yeah, I think materials. There is one slide past questions which isn't exempt, in case I got a question on it, but it's titled BCIS, which is Building Construction Index Scheme. Is that what it stands for? I don't know. I know I use it, but I don't know what it stands for. I think it's Building BCIS. Essentially, it's an industry recognised way of tracking inflation in the market, and it's managed by the RICS. They bring in lots of data. They create an index in all kinds of areas of construction. The one that's most commonly used is the all-in tender price index. Over the period, the material inflation wasn't outside of whilst it was higher than BCIS because of the kinds of materials we use, I don't think it was significantly out of kilter with what the inflation that the market saw over that period, where I think that my view was that the subcontractor increases far exceeded what we should have expected. than the BCIS, forecast from BCS, which is why I mentioned that in the presentation as opposed to materials.
Oliver, are you happy?
Yeah, thanks. I think in answer as well, yeah, by procuring materials early, you would have probably seen a saving as if it hadn't have been accelerated, it would have been later. However, the way the prices have worked, it's still shown that deficit sort of coming through. So I think, yeah, by doing it quicker in this climate that we've been going through, yeah, absolutely. The earlier you are, you're buying them before some of those increases. So yeah.
On other sites like Nora 4, where we've had the space, we've bought materials earlier, as I've said. Just South Lynn Road, very constrained site. We've taken site like kind of kindly given to us by Resorts to help mitigate that on the coach park, but we can only ever store so much. You also have to consider vandalism and theft and things like that. So we didn't buy as many materials early because of that constraint on this site. So that, which was a decision, but it exposed ourselves to inflation.
I'd just briefly add, this is an example of a difficult site in a difficult sort of economic conditions as well going through, which is why you see some of those changes, those challenges, and it's trying to manage that risk. And I think, like you say, where you can purchase early, where you see inflation, you try to do that, and you try and take that forward where you can. But there's a balance. But I think the accelerated program in that condition probably did help, but it didn't help from some of those other points that James has made. I think when we look at it look at the whole program, that helps show how we're balancing out some of those different 8 cycles within the economy, but also those harder to develop sites. So you can see that from the program wide, whereas you might have some sites which don't look like they've performed particularly well, but they've been harder, they've been at a difficult time. You've got other sites, as we saw earlier, that you've got sort of delivering at a point where you've got house price inflation, but also you haven't got that inflation hitting materials as much. So it's a balance across the board. Thank you.
I wonder if ACP is always attractive, because you look at it and you think free money, wonderful. I think perhaps we need to look in a bit more detail at the impact it has, and you've described it, James, on decision-making process. It's in a complex development like this. If we're building, hopefully the council wouldn't build boxes, but more standard, simpler construction may have more of a place. Certainly, it's a no-brainer in that instance, isn't it? But I think perhaps we look at that and the impact on the decision-making processes you've described.
Yeah, I think ACP was really good for the whole, a number of our sites, Parkway, Nora 4, all benefited from the ACP programme. We were the biggest single recipient of ACP funding in the country. We should be really proud of that. Yeah. And it has enabled us to deliver on a number of goals across the programme, as I've almost bleated on about this morning. I think whether you select to take funding that is offered to you or can be applied for, and the implication that has on our resource and our decision-making processes needs to be looked at whenever we're applying for any funding in any area of the borough. And we are probably getting better at that, I think.
Yeah, point well made. Are there any further questions? Brief comment?
Just briefly comment, the fact that we get this funding as well just shows the relationship with Homes England and the delivery and the point that they believe we can deliver, taking that forward. So I think that's really good, and that comes from these projects, that comes from wider relationships as well, and that work there. So I think that's been really
the Esclair is a successful track record, and that's testament to a number of administrations, but that does bring its own pressure, doesn't it? That you've always delivered, so you need to continue to deliver. There will be issues where that is difficult, as we've seen. Councillor Morley.
Yeah, James, one lesson to me would have been during the planning process. There was a lot of aggravation, if you wish, about the use of the car park as losing car parking spaces. But there was no mention there of the fact is that the materials, once we said we get going, that the adjacent car park would be used as a materials holding bay, if you wish. And so there was we used more of the car parks than we actually intended in the first place. And I wondered whether or not there's a lesson there in terms of materials handling And because it's quite a tight site,
Yeah.
because you still had the car park next to it. And whether or not there's a lesson to be learned there in being a bit more open about, you know, how, the footprint that we're going to have on site footprint in that.
It's a good point. I don't think the amount of storage that would be needed was probably foreseen when we undertook the planning application. Just the only point I'd make on that is the area of material storage we've taken is coach parking, and we did so having undertaken an assessment in kind of with input from resorts on how many coaches come in at any period of the year, making sure that the bit of capacity that we've taken is actually not needed at the times of year. And then what we've done with Lovell is, Easter's approaching, pull that right in, add a couple more coach parking spaces to make sure that any increased need is covered. Easter passes, we expand out again. The summer, we take it right back.
I'm sure it will be effectively, but it's just a question of awareness to start with of the footprint needs to talk to the, you know, the local council, town council.
Sorry, can you please use your microphones?
Sorry, I was just, it was a codicil, apologies. It was just a question of making sure that awareness and that of the footprint on site, and that local organisations were aware of that. Thank you.
I think that's another lesson to be learned. I do want to move on, but we have good car park data, as we know. This would be part of once we get into post-project evaluation stage, we can look at the space taken, income foregone. Was there any impact on peak demands? As we know, those peaks are short and tight, so we can look at whether there was an impact. And the point you make about the coach park, Matthew, unless
I was just going to make that point. I'm a resident of Stanton, drive past the car parks quite a lot. There's always capacity in there, apart from a couple of percent of the year. You know, it's the holiday season, bank holiday, and it is weather dependent. So I think it's a relatively minor issue personally.
A point well made, as was Councillor Morley's lessons we learned, and that'll all form part of post-evaluation, no doubt. So with that in mind, I'd like to draw that to a close, and if we can exclude public and press, which is superfluous, if I can find my wording, if we could agree that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1, schedule 12A to the Act. Are we agreed? And could we agree that by show of hands, please? That's agreed. Thank you. Lauren, will you remove us from